One of my small child habits was putting things up in piles and then taking them back down, putting them in a different one. Hours of endless amusement. Coins.
Yes, I still do that.
Yeah. This can only lead to disaster, can't it?
I think you can do it.
I appreciate your confidence in me.
It's like Poltergeist.
Would you like to smell
Very good.
some things?
Yes.
Thank you. I had no idea whether or not that was going to work. I thought we'd talk about chypres as opposed to sheep. I'm sure we've had this discussion. And look at that, we're back down to 2 smelling strips apiece.
Mhm.
It's just...
Definition of chypre.
Interesting. I say oak moss, except you can make them without oak moss, you can make them with veramos, which is the synthetic version of oak moss. But indeed, my friends, the Waft from the Loft, had a discussion about this last week and said that they had to have labdanum, they said oak moss, and then off they went. Well, I've made chypres that don't have labdanum in them, they've had opopanax instead, or maybe styraz. But it's got to have a moss. I'd normally use oak moss, the natural one, which now the one we use has had atronol and chloroatronol taken out, and they're the things that used to cause the nasty skin problems, so they've gone. So, also tree moss is called, which is from cedar trees.
Mm-hmm.
Childhood joke? You see the tree? It's always, you know, once you've got it, it won't go away, so there you go. You have that one for nothing. Cedar moss and veramos.
Mm-hmm.
So, but them, a moss, I'd say patchouli. I don't think you can have a chypre fragrance without patchouli these days, because there were chypre fragrances from like the 1870s and 50s that have none of these things in at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just somebody's idea of what the island of Cyprus smelled like. Bergamot, preferably shed loads, and a balsam. So probably labdanum, maybe a popanax, although that's more restricted.
Stupid question. What's a balsam?
Okay, so that's something which is it's or a resin actually. It's a sticky substance that comes out of trees that then has to be purified. Trees or shrubs, you know, sometimes like sap.
Yeah.
It sort of comes. So rather than taking the wood and distilling it and making an essential oil, this stuff is often tapped or collected from the trees. Labdanum famously used to be collected from goats' beards because they like nibbling labdanum leaves and they get the sap onto their beards, and so that would be combed out and then used in perfumery.
Wow.
Yeah. So goats were harmed in making this labdanum these days. And then you've got its sister, which is the absolute cistus taken from the trees and branches. But sticky things, ancient materials which have been used for thousands of years and are generally quite sticky. So they would be considered old school base notes.
Yeah.
So there are many and varied. There's even a modern theory, don't need it, oak moss, any moss in it at all, or you can just get by with patchouli and bergamot and put fruity floral on top. Then what do you do with them? Well, almost limitless. You can have light citrusy ones, you can have deep floral ones, you can have some real hard hitting, sort of dry as a bone, stark, elegant green leafy ones.
Yeah.
And I like making them, so I have made a lot.
But
one that I did recently, which is called oak mossery, that was an example of how to make a classic Oh, we're looking at the flashing light.
Should I have all the lights?
No.
Strobing. There we go.
It is. No, a bit.
It's fine.
Literally on the blink. So yeah, I made oak mossery as an example for my students of how to make a chypre fragrance like this, and now play with it. Here's the basics. It's like, here's how to play the 12-bar blues. Now, what you're going to add to it. That.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd bring that, and I also made another one at the same time from using only the materials you get in the kit, called It Grows on Trees, because I heard I don't know, an Instagram live or somebody by one of those people who has a brand but probably doesn't make all the perfumes, should we say, who said that oak moss grows on the ground in the woods in Paris, and it's not that kind of moss.
No.
It's actually a lichen, and it grows on trees. So my way of dealing with this is just to make one called it grows on trees. So suddenly, but I actually made it with no oak moss in it. I made it with berry moss because it's possible.
Yeah.
I'm going to dip the oak moss and then.
I've never smelt that one. It grows on trees.
It grows on trees. No, you probably haven't, because I made up. What I do is I make a tiny amount for me while I'm creating it to check that it works, and then I will release one of the ones each month. But I don't. I didn't make a big batch of It Grows on Trees. I probably ought to. Okay, so this is the actual oak moss itself, which we could probably just sit here for the next 5 minutes. Okay, make up your own description of oak moss. It's okay. Notes of creosote. I mean, obviously, notes are not what you put in something. It's quite. It is woodsy, but it smells quite darkened, singed. I say, not burnt, but a bit singed.
It smells quite. It smells to me like the dentist in a good way.
The cleansing stuff that you get when you're...
Yeah, or when... Yeah, it smells like something that would sterilise. I mean that in a good way, I don't mean that in a...
And I'm laughing in a recognising what you're saying, relating kind of a way. Thing about it is that it's almost impossible actually to smell it much in the perfume. You don't need masses of oak moss in the fragrance for it to make its presence felt, but to have an effect. But I thought, okay, where have I actually put, which one's the oak mossery?
Third down.
Here. Let's spray that, because I wanted to talk about this one really. I just missed the stick, didn't I? That's the kind of thing which, if I didn't spot that point, I'd missed the stick. Somebody would put it in the comments. Oh, no.
Thank you. I really like this one.
I mean,
it's funny because when you smell, you know, obviously we comment on this all the time, but it's almost like the oak moss, having just smelt it, has now just moved out of the way in this, so now I can smell the bergamot a lot.
Yeah.
A bergamot.
I can smell a bergamot. Yes, it's in fact it's the second biggest quantity of material in this fragrance. Is the bergamot. So, I'm going to say what's in it. I'm going to say why. Because
go on then.
That's a Harry Batch sheet. That is. I can read it. Yes. I do have ISOE Super in it, so it's kind of 50s style rather than original. Like, it's not 20s, 30s. I put in, so I made an accord, which is my Hang on a second, where's my sister's gone? Oh, there it is, it's okay. I thought for a minute I'd left it out. Double checking. My chypre accord here is oat moss, patchouli, labdanum, cistus, and they're from the same plant, but one's from the sticky sap and one's from the twigs and leaves. Veramos, which is the synthetic version, and bergamot. Masses of bergamot. So that I made as that's the central sun of this fragrance, and then I built out with other things. So I've made a rose, jasmine, lily of the valley, which is hydroxycitronella, and woods, amarissans, cedar atlas. I put it'd be the kind of mid layer. If somebody was going to do it as a pyramid, that would be the mid layer. But a classic rose, jasmine, lily of the valley, 1920s through to 1970s rose accord. I mean, floral accord for a chypre, and then sometimes it's sandalwood, sometimes it's rosewood. I went with amarice, which is the West Indian style sandalwood, torchwood, and cedar atlas, which is like, you know, like I think it smells like a wild cat in the forest.
Up a tree.
Up a tree. Yeah. Then I chose to put I did put the classic beach thing, gamma under. I'm a bit tired.
Undecalactone.
I know. Yeah, thank you. Gamma undecalactone. Peach lactone, also known as peach aldehyde, but it's not an aldehyde. I put that with lavender and blackcurrant bud absolute.
So there's peach in this? A peachy smell?
Yeah, there isn't peach.
No, but I mean, that's what I mean, a peachy smell.
Yeah, I know you know that, really.
Yes,
but, you know.
that's coming through. I think I'm going to make a prediction for the next sort of deeply fashionable fragrance, deeply fashionable smell.
Okay.
I think it's going to be peaches. I think everything's going to be peaches.
Everything's going to be peaches.
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Well, I think Tom Ford just did one, so...
Well, there we go, and I didn't know that.
No, of course you didn't, but that means that everybody wants one.
Yes.
So...
Wow, look at this. I'm in tune with Debenhams.
I was just compounding Mother Nature's Naughty Daughters yesterday, and that's technically a chypre as well. It's just... Because it's got the malt and the hazelnut, it's sort of a gourmand chypre. And I was just thinking how much that is of the style of the very full-on, mossy, sweet gourmands that cost lots and lots of money these days and sell for an absolute fortune. But I didn't bring that one up because I was compounding it because we've run out. But Mother Nature's Naughty Daughters is also a chypre. But this one is like, and evidently, obviously, this is what chypres are like. So I put Hedione in, and I put Isoy Super in. Wait, I might stick around. And I put in 3 different musks. So something for them to sit on, and also, you know, to help them project a little and last longer.
Yeah.
So it's not complicated. You probably count here. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 things on the formula sheet. But then I tend to use actual bergamot instead of making it up out of 5 different synthetics. So
See, it's an interesting thing that you say about, when you compare it to the 12 bar blues or whatever, where you're like, the rules are there, but you can jam on it however you like. And so oat mossery is something that when I smell it, I go, this is really distinctly recognisable as a style of perfume. But I've never smelt anything like it in that style.
Yeah.
But, so it's almost like it definitely, exactly that. It definitely fits in the box, but then it's a corner of the box that I haven't visited.
Thank you. I think that you put that extraordinarily well. There's a piece that Brooke just wrote for the Patreon on ambers, and for that reason I'm going to spray Drive Them Wild, because I think of this as a chypre, but where ambers and chypres in mid-century, last century, they overlap a lot. Oh my goodness.
Oh wow.
A monsoon. So Drive Them Wild, made with materials all available in 1933, or they could have been. I'm not sure if people were using cocoa absolute. But this is very evidently quite spicy vanilla balsams in here, with the labdanum, which makes amber, but also makes its presence felt in chypres. But this has oak moss in, and patchouli, and bergamot, and labdanum. So a lot of the 30s through to 70s fragrances, they could go one way or the other. You could put them in an amber category, or you could say they're a chypre. You add the oak moss, I think it draws it over the chypre. But people have been reviewing this one recently. You know, it just pops up on a fragrance group somewhere, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, I think this about it." And somebody said they thought it smelled like Shalimar, which is famously an amber, because it's got lots of vanilla in it, or at least lots of ethyl vanillin, to be honest. So what is this then? Is this? It's an ombre chypre.
Yes.
But then that's why it's difficult to tell. If somebody says, "Well, I wouldn't have known that was a chypre," it doesn't matter. Do you like it? What does it smell of? It smells of spiced vanilla and tonka and luxury and jasmine and osmanthus and fabulousness is what it smells of. It smells, I hope, of Dolores del Rio and her garden.
So these perfume classifications are they more to do with what it smells like or what's in it?
Ooh, and there's a good question, because that's both. It depends who's doing the classifying.
It's not. It's a bit like genres of music, isn't it? It's like, you know. Actually, it's not. It's less. It's less like that.
But it is because there's a lot of sort of crossover. There's, you know, say in the UK where you have the charts.
Yeah.
And things get to the top of the charts or not, and it's a song. Whereas in the US, it's all divided into lots of different styles of chart.
Yeah.
And then they didn't know what to do with Craig David.
Yeah.
Because,
no one knows what to do with Craig David.
Nice man. He seems like a nice man.
Yeah, he does seem
so funny. Decent sense of humour. But they didn't know where to put him in the US charts because he was black, but his band was white, and his style didn't fit into... So...
Yeah.
They didn't know where to put him. And sometimes, if you don't know anything about perfume genres and you go into a shop and you just want to buy something that smells nice, you might find that what you prefer is the style of a particular perfumer who's working across different genres.
Yes.
Because they like putting certain things in.
Yeah. So is it possible to make I suppose it is possible to make a fragrance that doesn't fit into any of these categories?
Sometimes I think you have to sort of invent a new category for them to fit. I mean, look at what I did on my holidays, which has got moss in it.
Yeah.
But it's... I gave it to Michael Edwards, and he sort of... because it's herbal, it's got mint and lavender, it's got vanilla and ethyl maltol. Is it... You know, what is it? Is it aquatic because it's got calone in it and reminds you of the seaside? I honestly can't even... I could have a look in the book. I honestly can't remember exactly where he put it. But I think it was something like a gourmand version of an aquatic. But when I was working on, you know, where do we put some of these things in the book, I tended to go with what's it like after a couple of hours. What's under there? What's on the base? What is it built on top of?
Okay, yes.
So, you know, how does it feel?
Yes, interesting. What's the chord structure of it? Forget the melody.
Yeah, you're like, once you pass the piccolo and the oboe,
Yes. So you quite.
you know, is it got a rhythm section, or has it got a full orchestra, or has it got?
Yeah, and
We're
quite
off
often with
again.
identifying different sort of types of classical music, you have to refer to the chord structures rather than the sort of like melodies and descants and stuff over the top.
I like my music metaphors with you.
We're
So
doing lots of them today.
You know what this is, and anyway, it's named after a song. So,
Yeah.
but on first impressions,
For those who can't see, it's called.
this
it's
is Meet Me on the
the
Corner. It's
Meet
called,
Me on
yeah.
the Corner.
So first impressions, what would you say this is? If you
Well,
Finish
see,
off on it.
the problem is that
Listen
now
to it.
having smelt all these other things, I've never smelt Meat on the Corner smell like this before. Mm-hmm. Because in these sessions, I smell things for the first time again. Because I'm sort of like, it's like, the experience of doing a certain exercise is different after you've stretched.
yeah.
It's like I've stretched now, and so now I
Yeah.
feel like I'm fully able to. So
Well, that guide to the orchestra for children. That was it. Tchaikovsky or was it Sanson? Oh, there's some anyway.
Peter and the Wolf,
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yes, that one. And this is what the oboe sounds like. Now listen to it with the orchestra, and everybody goes, "Oh, I know what an oboe is."
Yeah.
So
So
look at this. We could call this. Where I'm going with this is, we could call this a citrus fragrance.
So again, that's what I was about to say. I was about to say that what's popping out now is the citrus.
Yes. So, if you walked into a shop and said, of course, not many shops because not many stock it, but theoretically, if you happened to walk in a shop and had this and said, I would like a citrus fragrance, it would not be wrong to get that off the shelf. But for me, it's a chypre because that's what's at its beating heart. Plus, loads of musks. So, I mean, people might not notice the chypre bit in that's just kind of gently holding it all together. You know, like your Auntie May, who makes sure everybody's got a cup of tea at the party, but nobody really knows she's there. The chypre heart in this is Auntie May, whereas all the kids making a lot of noise are the citruses. And the people just sitting in the back having a chat, they're the musks.
Yeah.
But without Auntie May, it would all fall apart.
So is this oak moss that's in this?
There is oak moss in this, yes. I could just smell this forever.
Yeah,
But
I'm just thinking.
that is
I
perfume of
want
my
to put this on.
Arthur, please,
Thanks.
wear it.
I do have a bottle of this at home.
Good. But I start off trying to think, right, I'll make a film to explain exactly what a chypre is, and instead we sort of come at it at lots of different angles and explain
Well, I sort
how
of
difficult
leave,
it is. 'Cause
sort
it's
of leave
difficult.
feeling more confused. But I mean that in a good way. Like, no, I don't. I was just trying to make a joke.
Reassure me, like.
Yeah, sort of. If I was to, a chypre is climbing halfway up a tree. You're not climbing all the way up the tree. You're kind of halfway up the tree where all the lichen is.
And then, are we? What?
That's just where I am with a chypre. Is that I'm
Okay.
imagining that's where it is. It's halfway up a tree.
Okay.
You don't have to understand. You don't. It
It's
doesn't have
fine.
to make sense.
No.
It does to me.
Well, I'm glad. That sounded a bit patronising. I'm very glad it makes sense to you.
Oh yes.
I'm giving you this because this is another of the materials which is in almost all the ones I love, and that is
Labs-in.
actually no, it's
Oh.
patchouli.
It's patchouli. Yes, of course it is.
I'll give you the labs in them, and then you'll know. Patchouli is a bit fresher. It's funny how I did workshop Saturday, and it was via Zoom, but the other 4 people were all in the same room, so. But they had it set on blurred, so every now and again one face would pop out and the rest of it was fog. So
Oh.
somebody would talk and it would go on to them, but they didn't know how to unset it from, when you have blurred background so people can't read what's on your shelves and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just sort of focuses on your face. But when you've got 4 people in the room, I'll fetch that later. Okay, this is the labdanum. But my point was, everybody said,
Oh yeah.
when they all smelt the patchouli at the same time in the kits you'd packed, they all said, "Oh, that's not like the patchouli we used to smell down in hippie shops." No, because that was cheap and this is expensive.
Yeah.
So the labdanum is...
So the patchouli makes the labdanum smell really sweet. If I come in, so labdanum has always smelt to me quite like complicated and heavy and thick, and now I smell it and it just zings.
And they put them together. See, that combination can go into an amber. It can go into woods.
That's so nice.
So the amber, and it can go into a chypre quite nicely. We're talking Venn diagrams here, not distinct definitions.
My old art teacher always used to say, colour affects surrounding colour. It was always, and that's it. It's like, it's the same with smells.
It's why if you've got a green apple, you give it a purple shadow.
Yeah.
And the shadow is not black.
Yeah. And so, it's all context, isn't it? It's like the labdanum out with the context of the patchouli changes it.
Yeah, the patchouli smells drier, lighter and clearer, I think, to me. But together, I like to use them together.
Yeah, they're lovely.
And at which point we go on to Court of Ravens. So, people think that chypres are out of fashion, but I think it's because they've smelt Mitsuko, and Mitsuko is by Guerlain.
Yeah.
That's one extreme chypre. That is. That's
Yeah.
That's a hard-nosed, pure. No. That's your improvised half an hour's jazz worth of chypre Mitsuko. I mean, pure and fine, and maybe it's actually more like going to an entire concert of Bach preludes or something.
Yeah.
Fugues. It's a fugue.
It's a fugue. Yeah. Well, my impression of chypres has always been that they're slightly old-fashioned. That they're quite soapy. Or am I getting confused?
No, you're not wrong. Am I disabusing you of this understanding?
Yes.
Because some of the soapiness often comes from aldehydes at the top. And a lot of vintage fragrances started out with an aldehyde burst because Chanel No. 5 was so popular that people thought, oh, I'll create a bit of an impression of that. And so they'd stick aldehydes in the opening of their fragrance as well. And that tends to lead to a bit of... Well, if I say it's soapy, it's because a lot of soap was then made to smell just like Chanel No. 5. So we've all come to associate the smell of soap.
Soap doesn't have an inherent smell.
Not a good one, anyway.
Please remind me what an aldehyde is.
Okay. It is the aldehydes that we generally talk about as aldehydes, there are lots. It's a particular chemical group, but there are this small group called the fatty aldehydes, or aliphatic, that's nicer, or les aldéhydes grasses, because grasse just French for fat. So C8, C9, C10, C11, C12, and I heard somebody describe them once as more like a feeling than a smell. They're I find them icy. They smell waxy, but a group of those, we think 8, 9, 10, 11, I think, go into a lot of 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s vintage fragrances, and they have sort of a lift and sparkle effect. I don't like them by themselves, so I drop only a tiny amount of aldehydes in anything, but...
So they're synthetic.
Oh yeah, but there are a lot of aldehydes that exist naturally. So there are aldehydes in roses. So a natural rose will have aldehydes at the top as well. It's what gives natural rose a kind of waxy smell when you smell a rose, and they sort of almost feel as if they ought to be waxy. So there are natural ones, and but the ones that we talk about, you talk about an aldehydic fragrance, it's normally got at least one of those at the top.
I remember you saying once that. Sorry,
this is Court of Ravens.
Yeah, we'll very quick before we come back to this. I remember you once telling me that soapy feeling can also come from ginger.
Ginger, spot on, Arthur. Yeah, it's a ginger essential oil. It smells like ginger. It smells like ginger. Smells like ginger. You put it in your perfume. It smells like soap.
Yeah. Such a shame, isn't it?
Yes. I mean,
ginger's so lovely.
I found that out very early because I was trying to make a fragrance for my friend Urara's green ginger cafe, and I just made green soap.
Yeah. Such a shame.
The ultimate soap. So the reason I give you that is my Court of Ravens, my goth scent is. Oh, by the way, I'm covered in ink today because I've been exploring pens. We found this one. It's the Tusby eco pen, and the barrel is so blinking big that you hardly just. We like eco pens, or as we call them, pens. Yes.
I might just go and unscrew that light bulb because I don't know if it's getting in the way of the.
Okay. You might have. Don't burn yourself. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. Rose, patchouli, lots of citrus fruits because me, and it's a chypre, but it borders on amber, but it's mostly a rose. Our friend Simon, he loves it. He said you should market it. It's like I sort of am trying. I just
What does that mean?
I know.
I think that means employ an agency, doesn't it? Usually when people say that.
Or tell people, make a fuss about it. Here, Court of Ravens. Woo, fuss. Should we do an ad? We should do an ad. We should do one of those.
Let's do. Okay.
Perfume ad.
That's our next film.
Okay.
We're going to make a perfume ad.
Okay.
That is a brilliant idea.
Thank you.
Oh, I have so many ideas.
Yeah. They used to have words in them, and then suddenly they didn't anymore.
I think we should have
international.
Yeah.
Should we stand on the? Maybe we can get on the roof again. We can do. Somebody's standing on a roof in the ads at the moment.
Yeah.
So at the edge of a roof.
Yes. She is. She was. She wants. What is she?
Although it can't possibly be as good as that one that Samsung did.
Which one's that?
The Max Whitlock one for laundry.
Oh right, yeah, of course, yeah. Do you remember Lee Mack had a stand-up once where he was like, imagine if they did Ginster's pasty adverts the same as the. You want it. What is it? It's Ginster's. Yeah.
There are, I don't know, there's something about the whole perfume. Something I don't do, which is perfume in this kind of romantic, you could be something entirely different if you just wear this perfume thing. I sort of can't. And when I write about them, I tend to be quite practical. It's like, well, it's got this in, so it smells like that.
Yes.
But I mean, and it smells lovely, but it's not going to change your life. But they are promised things almost like, you put this on and you can dream romantically of you could be in Paris on a rooftop. No, you can't. You're going to be stuck at home.
Well, it's the same way that Apple market their laptops. You buy an Apple laptop and suddenly you'll be a graphic designer. Yeah. It's just classic. It's like Edward Bernays' propaganda. It's classic old school PR where what you're selling isn't a fragrance.
The dream, Arthur.
You're selling an idea.
See, I like to sell the smell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this, the waft from the loft.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is what got me.
Sorry, I didn't know you were asking me.
No, I wasn't really. I was doing a dramatic pause.
If you're lucky, I'll edit a drum roll in there.
Thank you. You say lucky. Aldehydes. Because they love an aldehyde, so I put a little bit of aldehyde C10 in, which is the more orangey one. Exists in orange peel. So, but you go all the way through this, and you've got the green garden, and you've got woods, and you've got me evoking stones, and
not provoking stones.
I would never provoke a stone. It would win. Lots of moss. So, but what is it? Chypre? I mean, I'd sort of say yes, but is it an amber? Sort of yes as well. Woods definitely. But at the end of the day, what do you classify it as? And I just tend to say it's a chypre.
This is the classic. There is. So obviously all the perfumes all have all these classifications. They all have these little families and groups. But ultimately, actually for people who just going into shops and buying perfume, there are three.
Okay.
There's I want something fresh. There's I want something citrusy, or I want something musky.
People like.
And they would describe this as musky, even though it's entirely
because
incorrect.
People get mixed up with musks, which are soft and gentle and fluffy, and oak moss. The oak moss smell is what people say. Oh, but that's what musk is.
Yes,
and it isn't. That's what moss is.
Yes, so, my impression before, years ago, before meeting you and coming in here and stuff, was that actually musky meant incensey. Sort of like that kind of...
Back of the wardrobe.
Yeah, someone burning joss sticks.
Ah, yeah. Well, that's actually hippie.
Yeah.
What have we not smelt? We smelt that. Ah. Now, you see, I got out complicated shadows. Because this is complicated everything, but this has got... Okay.
I love complicated.
I do too. Oak moss, a fair amount. But... How have I not... Don't mind me. I'm looking for bergamot because I can't believe that it isn't in there. But, okay. The plan versus the actual. It's got the oak moss, but it's got frankincense. In the middle it's got sandalwood. It's got a whole load of cedre, which is citron. Which is a lemony thing. So instead of the bergamot, I've just gone full on lemons. So and then there's narcissus, honeybush, orris, vetiver. Does just the oak moss make it a chypre fragrance? Or is what it is, in fact, where would we classify it? The lemons there for the sunshine to make the shadows behind everything else. And then everything else you have to I say lemon, cedre. That it's almost like that's so shiny in your nose that you don't see the shadows at first, and then you have to wait until they all emerge. So all those things, what they did in the shadows. Vetiver, the oak moss, bit of white birch, narcissus, orris, sandalwood, even milk chocolate extract. Although actually it smells of milk chocolate, doesn't have any milk in it, so it's still vegan. Is it the chypre?
I would, in my very limited experience, class this as a chypre because it just
Having
smells.
smelled all the other things,
Because it smells like one.
Maybe I just can't make anything else. I think.
Is it your favourite parameter to work within?
Probably yes. Probably I think that if something has a bit of oak moss just at its roots, it gives everything else strength and the courage to be itself in a perfume. That's what I think. It's oak moss gives it confidence to do what it wants. So I'll just slip a little bit in there, and I turn everything into more or less a chypre. I mean, there are some that aren't. Lemon sherbet's definitely not a chypre.
No.
I must make some others that are definitely not chypres.
Maxed out. That's not a chypre.
No, it's not. I don't know what it is. But
I don't know what it is. I was just thinking.
Is it a gourmand wood? I mean, if you had to stick it in a box, it's like, oh, it's just so complicated. So why do we classify these things? So that you can help people find out. But what happened to me was I met this lovely chap who I don't think he's at Liberty anymore, but he used to work for Frederick Malle. He's called Albertino. And when he said, what fragrances do you like? This is way before I started making anything or discovering anything, just when I was still working for Lush as a writer. I told him my favourite fragrances, like Diorella and Eau de Roche, and he said, but they're all chypres, and they're mostly made by Edmond Trudnicka. Like, oh, okay. And I liked Jean-Claude Elena, and I liked Edmond Trudnicka, and I liked all of these chypres, and I didn't know that's what I liked. But somehow I'd managed to discover them. De ci, de là. Fruity floral, but chypre.
They're very classy, chypres are.
Aye, that'd be me.
They're very classy fragrances. Always. That's one thing it will never not be. It's classy.
I think we should probably. So yes. Yeah. Are you classy or are you not?